I am 95 years old. I have outlived 2 presidents, 3 dogs, 1 husband, and more regrets than I have fingers left to count them on. I have had 95 years to think about the choices I made, the ones I am proud of, and the ones that quietly, without fanfare, without any dramatic moment of crisis, stole my life from me while I was standing perfectly still. And here's what I want to tell you today. The thing that cost me most was not a bad decision. It was the decision I never made, the door I never opened, the room I never walked into. I was afraid, not of anything large, not of war or disaster or death, although I have met all 3. I was afraid of something smaller, something embarrassing even, and that small fear became the architect of my entire existence. Let me tell you what I mean. When I was 22 years old, I had a best friend named Ruth Ellen Tanner. Ruth was 23, and she had red hair that she wore loose when every other woman in Dayton still pinned hers up. She wore it like a statement, like she had already decided who she was and dared the world to have an opinion about it. Ruth was the kind of woman people noticed when she walked into a room, and she always looked like she knew it and was slightly bored by it. She was the most alive person I have ever known. In the autumn of 1952, I remember it was October because the maples outside our apartment building were turning the color of fire. Ruth came to me with 2 letters. One was hers, one was mine. They were from the Cincinnati School of Arts. We had applied together months earlier at her insistence. Ruth had talent that was obvious to anyone who looked at her sketchbook. Mine, I was not so sure about, but she had pushed me. She had sat beside me at the kitchen table on a Tuesday night in June under a bare yellow bulb, and she had made me fill out the application. She had even addressed the envelope. Both letters said yes. I remember holding that envelope. I remember the weight of it. I remember Ruth grabbing my arm, squeezing it so hard her knuckles went white, saying, "Marge, Marge, we're going." Her voice was shaking, and I felt something rise in my chest, something bright and enormous, and then just as quickly, something else rose underneath it, something cold. What if I am not good enough? What if I get there and everyone sees immediately what I already suspect, that I do not belong? What if I fail, and they all watch me fail, and I have to come back to Dayton with nothing? I told Ruth I could not go. I said it was money. It was not money. Ruth knew it was not money. She looked at me for a long time with those green eyes, and she did not argue. She just nodded once, slowly, the way you nod when someone says something you already knew was coming. She packed one bag. She got on a bus in November. And she became a painter. A real one. She showed in Chicago by the time she was 31. I have a postcard she sent me from Milan in 1967 pinned to a corkboard in my bedroom to this day. I became a school teacher, which I do not regret. Teaching was a beautiful life, but I want you to understand something. That moment, that kitchen table, that October, that letter, was not the last time fear made my decision for me. It was the first time I noticed it doing so. After that, I started seeing its fingerprints everywhere. On the conversation I never had with my supervisor in 1958 about a promotion I had earned. On the trip to Ireland, my husband Harold begged me to take with him in 1974. I said maybe next year, and there was no next year for that trip, because Harold got sick in 1979. On the friendship with my neighbor Cecilia, who invited me to her book club 12 times before she stopped asking. 12 times, I counted. Fear does not announce itself. That is what I need you to understand. It comes in the costume of reason. It wears the face of practicality. It says I am tired. It says maybe later. It says I am not the kind of person who does things like that. And you believe it because it sounds so sensible, because it feels like wisdom, because avoidance never feels like cowardice in the moment. It feels like caution. Let me talk to you directly. You reading this, you watching this, I want you to stop for a moment and think about the last 10 decisions you made by not deciding, the invitation you did not reply to, the conversation you kept rehearsing in your head but never had, the application you did not submit, the city you did not move to, the relationship you did not pursue, because what if it does not work? Think about those moments. Now I want you to ask yourself this question, and I want you to sit with it. What is your life actually shaped like? And is it the shape you chose? Or is it the shape your fear chose for you? Because here is the truth no one will say to you plainly. Avoidance is not neutral. When you avoid something, you do not stay in the same place. You shrink. The world does not pause while you work up the courage. It continues. And the longer you wait, the smaller your world becomes. Not dramatically, not overnight. It happens the way a room gets dusty. You don't notice a single particle of dust falling. You just look up one day and realize everything is covered. I have a metaphor I have used with students for 30 years. A river that never moves becomes a swamp. The water does not stay clean and fresh just because it is staying still. It stagnates. It grows things you did not invite. Your life is the same. Motion is not reckless. Motion is what keeps water alive. Do you have a fear you have been managing for so long that you have stopped calling it fear? That is the most dangerous kind. The fear you have made peace with, the fear you have decorated and furnished and installed a good lamp next to. In 1988, when I was 58 years old, something happened that I have thought about almost every week since. My daughter Carol, she was 29 then, newly divorced, 2 small children, absolutely terrified, called me on a Wednesday afternoon. She had been offered a position in Seattle, a real opportunity. She called me to talk herself out of it. I could hear it in her voice. She wanted me to give her a reason to say no. And God forgive me, I almost did. I almost said, Carol, the children need stability, Carol. It's so far, Carol. Maybe wait until they're older. I had all the words assembled. I had been saying versions of them my whole life. But something stopped me. I do not know what. Maybe I heard Ruth in her voice. Maybe I heard the October of 1952 coming around again, 36 years later, in my own daughter's throat. I said, Carol, take the job. She was quiet for so long I thought the call had dropped. Then she said, Are you sure? And I said, I am the least sure person you know, but take the job anyway. She took the job. She built a beautiful life in Seattle. She is still there. Her children are grown. She calls me every Sunday morning, and every time I hear her voice, full and settled and at home in the life she built, I think, that was the one time I did not let fear speak for both of us. That was the one moment I interrupted the pattern that had run through my entire family for generations. Here's the paradox. You think that avoiding fear protects you from pain. It does not. Avoidance guarantees a different kind of pain. It guarantees the pain of the unlived life, the pain of lying at 95 in a quiet room, perfectly safe, perfectly comfortable, and perfectly full of wonder about what might have happened if you had simply said yes. Danger is a possibility. Regret, if you let fear drive, is a certainty. Your generation has more options than any human beings who have ever lived on this earth. More doors, more paths, more ways to be alive. And from what I observe, you are more afraid than any generation I have known, not of real threats, but of judgment, of being seen, of being wrong in public, of trying and being found lacking. You have infinite roads in front of you, and you are paralyzed at the trailhead. I do not say that to be cruel. I say it because I lived the same paralysis for 70 years, and I know precisely what is waiting at the end of it. Now I sit here, in this chair, in this house I have owned since 1961, and I want to tell you something that I had to learn the hard way, over the full length of a life. The world I live in now is very small, not because life forced it to be, because I let it be, because I spent decades saying not yet, because I kept choosing the known and the comfortable and the safe, and the known grew smaller every year. The comfortable became a cell I had furnished myself. The safe became a life that fit me so tightly I could barely breathe inside it. Harold, my husband, Harold, he was not afraid the way I was. He would walk into a room full of strangers and come out with 3 friends and a dinner invitation. He tried foods he could not pronounce. He went back to school at 54 for no reason except that he was curious. He died in 1996 without a list of things he had been meaning to do. I have such a list. I have had it for 40 years. It is very long, and I am 95, and most of it will not happen now. And that is a grief I did not expect, not grief for what was taken from me, grief for what I put down and never picked back up. So let me give you the things I wish someone had handed me at 22 outside that apartment building in October under those burning maple trees. Do the thing that scares you first, not after you are ready. You will never be ready. There is no version of you that wakes up one morning without fear. The fear does not leave. You go forward with it present. Do this week. Pick the one thing you have been circling for 6 months and put a date on it. Not someday, a date. Write it down. Stop letting avoidance pretend it is wisdom. When you hear yourself saying, I am just being practical, or it is not the right time, stop. Ask yourself honestly, is this reason or is this fear wearing a reasonable coat? It is almost always the coat. You know the difference in your body. Your stomach knows. Listen to it. Name your fear out loud, not in your head. Out loud. Say it to someone. Say it to a mirror if you have to. Fear is enormous inside your skull and absurdly small when exposed to air. I am afraid people will think I am not smart enough. I am afraid it will not work and I will have to face that. Say it. Watch it shrink. Say yes to the thing you have already said no to 3 times. 3 times is your number. If you have declined the same invitation, avoided the same conversation, postponed the same action 3 times, that is not caution. That is a pattern. Patterns become permanent. Say yes. This time, before it becomes the 4th time and then the 40th. Let someone know you. This one sounds simple. It is the hardest. Fear is most powerful in isolation. The things you carry alone always grow larger than they should be. Find one person. Tell them the real thing. Not the polished version, the real one. It will not kill you. The isolation might. I am 95 years old. I have had 95 years to think about this. And what I can tell you, what I have earned the right to tell you, is this. Fear is a loud liar. It tells you the world is dangerous and that stillness is survival. But you were not put here to survive. You were put here to be alive. Alive is the thing I kept choosing against, over and over, with my very best intentions. I still have that postcard from Ruth, Milan, 1967. She is standing in front of a painting she did, big and colorful, and so completely Ruth. Her hair is down. She is laughing at something outside the frame. She looks like she was born for that exact second. I look at that postcard and I do not feel envy anymore. I am too old for envy. I feel something quieter, something like a long exhale. That was supposed to be my life too, or something like it, something that required me to get on a bus and be terrified and find out what was on the other side of the terror. I did not go, and 95 years is a very long time to wonder what was over there. You still have time. That is what I want to leave you with. Not a lecture, just that one plain fact. You still have time. I am giving you the years I used up carefully and quietly and safely to tell you, do not use yours the same way. Go. Just go.